Today, I'm going to show you how to make every different type of beat on Playboi Carti's I Am Music. There's a wide variety of production on there and tons of secret techniques used by his producers that go way beyond your typical trap stuff. So let's start with Carti's most polarizing sound. This style is very heavy metal inspired and goes crazy at his shows because of the energy that the production brings. I wanted to match that energy by sampling some heavy metal guitars like they did on this song, Kind Of. I say kind of because even though it sounds like metal, it's actually taken from an R&B song. Regardless, I searched for heavy metal samples on YouTube and found this one. This is a good foundation, but it needs a lot of work. So let's use a technique from Pop Out that will give your sounds the edge that they need. To do that, I found this preset and clicked in a melody. Then I threw on 3 effects that completely mangled the sound. You can use anything you want, just make sure to push the detuning and distortion way further than you usually would. To finish off our melody, I went to Crush for some inspiration. Even though it's not quite in the same heavy metal realm, those choir vocals give an eerie feeling that fits perfectly here, so I layered in 2 on top. Now that the sample is done, it will be quite easy to add some standard trap drums and call it a day. However, the rockstar vibe doesn't end with the melodies. The drums are just as important. Try using this sound selection trick. It's so simple. Just pitch your one-shots down. If you choose the right sound, your hi-hats in particular will take on a heavier, more metallic tone, which fits with the distorted vibe we have so far. I also pitched down the snare and paired them both with a very distorted 808. I Am Music goes everywhere sonically, from the stuff you just heard to more melodic songs like this. I'm going to show you how to achieve that euphoric sound, but before we do, we need to make a sample. So I put down a progression in the minor scale, but using mostly major chords. This will give you the melodic sound that you're looking for. Now usually to build depth in a sample like this, I'd add a bunch of layers, but I noticed that Carti samples are simple and often use vocals to create that texture. So to do that, I first added a lead vocal followed by some ambient vocals in the background. I added a couple of finishing touches, including some brass chords inspired by Munyon and a bass guitar. When I first heard Rather Lie, the sample instantly gave me Clams Casino vibes. To get that sound, you need to put your sample into a granular engine. Mess around with the settings until it pulsates like this. Whilst I was recording it in Edison, I would turn the knobs to make the tempo of the chops change. From there, I chopped the parts that I liked and layered more chops on top in a higher octave, leaving us with this. And finally, like with our first beat, the drums need to match the sound of the melodies. We can't use heavy pitched down drum sounds because it just wouldn't work here. On Fine Shit, Backdoor and Rather Lie, the drum sound selection is tight and crispy. For our third track, let's move on to one of my favorite Carti sounds. Just give me that pussy and remind me, 'cause I can see you. We're going to be using some very interesting techniques in this section, but first, let's build a nice foundation. I think everyone knows that Serum is the best VST for these types of melodies, so I chose a bright preset and made this chord progression. I then laid that with an ARP, which brings a rhythm to the sample. With these beats, you want to really fill the frequencies. Keeping that in mind, I laid another synth on top, this time using a technique you can hear on Olympian. On the song you just heard, one of the synths has a talk box like sound to it. So I opened up Kilohertz Snap Heap and chose this preset. As I mentioned at the beginning, Carti's producers use a lot of unusual techniques, and that continues here with the vocals. Take Opium Baby for example. This song has divided a lot of people, and I can't lie, the beat is a bit weird, but personally, I love it. The way they took a vocal sample and laid a bunch of bright synths on top of it sounds super fire, so I used that as inspiration for our beat, adding in some vocals. Now, I wouldn't blame you for thinking, how can anyone rap on that? Well, you're right, and that's why we need to reference this song. The sample flip is so fire and leaves plenty of room for Carti. So here's how you can take a bright sample like we have and turn it into a crazy artist-ready beat. First, you need to pitch it down. Then I reversed and chopped it similar to Like Wheezy. The reversing in particular makes the vocals less present, meaning any artist can rap over it without clashing with those vocals. As is the theme of this album, a new beat means a new drum bounce. And for this sound, you want to add really fast hi-hats that feel frantic. A great way to do this is to layer a second hat on top and add a delay to it. Finally, I used another distorted 808 like you can hear on Opium Baby and a reversed one at the end of the loop. Last, but definitely not least, we have the sound that's become one of Carti's signatures.
I'm seeing that hoe out the water.
The texture on that synth is amazing, and here's how you can recreate it. First, I used the default preset in Serum and automated a filter on it so the high end has subtle changes as it plays. I also made it more plucky using the envelope and clicked in a fast melody. Next, I opened another Serum, choosing a softer sound. This sounds good, but it needs beefing up. So I added a chorus, some distortion, this vintage compressor, and a gate effect. These harsh, in-your-face synths are present on a lot of the album's tracks. However, Cardo also uses other techniques to create that spooky vibe for Carti. Take Mojo Jojo, for example.
Back in high school, I was wearing polo.
Those ambient stabs are so different to the harsh synth we just made, but together they work perfectly. To do something similar, find an ambient sound and layer it with some noise. You still need some sort of grit to the sound. Then drown it in reverb and add any effects you want. I finished off the melody with some extra glitchy textures that can be heard all throughout the album. And finally, I'm going to break down Cardo's drum secrets. First, he uses a particular snare pattern that isn't what most people would do. Rather than the last snare hitting here, it's moved here instead. Alongside that, there's a standard kick and hi-hat. However, the 808 you hear on Mojo Jojo is again not the norm. He added a flanger to it, which gives it such a unique texture.